Okay, so this talk is called the Performance Project, and the project here is on purpose because optimizing performance is not a one-time job, but instead you have to do this continuously. And I will get back to this matter in a few minutes. The first thing you all need to know about optimizing performance is that, in fact, it is very, very easy, because the internet is full of tips and tricks and techniques about how to make your website faster. The only problem is you need to know which of these tips and tricks do apply to your website and which don't. So it's not about it's too complicated to do. The more obvious problem here is, what should I do? So the goal of this talk here is I want to show you how you can sort of create a very simple to-do list with all of the steps that you need to do for your particular shop so that it is better than before. But before we do that, let's take a step back and talk about the two different approaches that we can use to optimizing performance. The first approach is we can add more horsepower. So obviously this will work by adding more power to what we already have. We can increase the performance. Everyone knows that. And this will work quite well, but this will also be a very expensive approach. So if budget is not the problem, then this is the way to go. The other approach would be to make it light and fast. And this here may seem very, very obvious, but the problem is that in reality, this is so hard to do, because every one of you guys who has ever done a relaunch of an online shop or has participated on a relaunch most likely has seen something like this. And the problem here is that we tend to add stuff to our online shops on a regular basis. I rarely see online shops that get developed, put online, and then no changes are made. The most common, more common case is that on more or less a daily basis, someone is working on the shop and someone is adding like stuff and adding features. And it's a bit like a backpack. So the more we put in, the more heavier it gets, and the more power we need if we want to run with the backpack on. So what we really need to think about here is, do I really need all of this? So I would really love to see online shops start measuring how many of their customers are really using the features that were added. And if a feature is not used or does not contribute to more sales, then why can't we remove this? The reality here is that we are very, very quick in adding new stuff, but we rarely delete or remove stuff. And this is also one of the topics that Paul and Benjamin touched in their talk. When you add plugins and then this plugin introduces a performance bottleneck, then maybe you can fix the plugin, but also you can have another look at if you really need this feature. So let's for now define performance as page load time. And let's have a look about the two different parts of an online shop where we have page load time. The first one is the application itself. This is what we call time to first byte. And basically, this is what Benjamin and Paul covered in their talk. So from a user perspective, this is the time, how long the browser window is empty, because the application in the background, the application on the server is working. And when the application is done after the time to first byte, what happens then is that the browser is rendering the shop. This is where Google Core Web Vitals come into play. And I will get back to why this is important in a minute. So what we did now is we wanted to see what is the impact of the application and what is the impact of the rendering in the browser on the total page load time, on the total performance of the shop. So what I did is I just chose some random shops. It absolutely doesn't matter which shops these are. What you see here is the page load time in dark blue, that's the application, and then in green, that's the rendering in the browser. And what we can see here basically is two things. First of all, obviously, the application time is crucial because this is the time that the user does not get any feedback or any interaction. This is where the browser window is literally empty because the application is working. So the longer the application takes means the later in the timeline the browser can start showing stuff. This is one thing that we see here from this analysis. But the other thing that we also see is that in terms of impact on the total performance, everything that happens in the browser, everything that happens after the application has a much bigger impact. So what does it mean? Maybe some of you will not like to hear this, but in my opinion, this means that it honestly does not really matter which software to use as an application, because most likely the bottlenecks that you will find in your particular shop will not be in the application, but it will be in the front end. So this means that choosing which software you want to use for your online shop will have lesser impact on the performance than what you do with your online shop in the future. So everything you add will sort of bloat the system and will sort of add render time. So let me give you some examples of this. Many of you may know this sort of picture, which you can do, which you were able to do with Shopware 5. So basically, what happened here is that the HTML framework, let's say, is rendered super fast. So the application time to first byte is super fast. But from a user perspective, the experience is quite different because for me as a user, this site is empty. It's not an online shop. I cannot do anything. And what happened here is that we tried to load the main content via Ajax. So this was sort of cheating performance because from a measuring of time to first byte perspective, this shop was really fast, but from a user experience perspective, it was not very fast. And this is one of the reasons why also Google is switching from keeping measurements with a stopwatch to user experience. So what now with the Google Core Web Vitals is more important than the actual time to first byte is everything that happens in the browser and is the user experience. Let me give you one more example of what I mean here. So not sure who of you knows these chatbots. I personally really hate them because I don't like to use them and I'm annoyed when I have to click them away. But I totally get that this is a feature that can add a benefit to an online shop. The problem that I see here is that I would love shops to start counting how many of their users are actually using this feature. So I'm not sure how many this is, but if I would guess, I would say maybe something between 1% and 5% of the users using this chat box here. And the problem with this is, oh no, let me explain it the other way around. There's absolutely no problem in adding a feature to your online shop which only benefits 1 or 5% of the users. But what is absolutely a problem is to punish 95% of your users with loading a feature that they don't want to use. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you want to add, for example, a chat box, what you could do is you can just add a fake button like a static HTML or a static icon or whatever. And then if the user clicks on that and wants to interact with the chat, then on that click, you can load the application. While doing performance profilings, we have literally seen frameworks of live chats which added 6 more JavaScripts to the shop. And it's totally okay to add this if the user wants that, but it's absolutely not okay to punish all the other users with loading stuff that they don't want to use. So another example would be adding or including YouTube videos in the shop. So what you can do here is, instead of loading the YouTube JavaScript, you can also just put a fake screenshot with the play button on the side, just a static image. And then when the user clicks, then we can load the YouTube JavaScript, the play, and then we can play the video. Because users will expect that when they click on the play button, that it will take like half a second or so until the video actually starts playing. Users will not expect that the video just snaps like on click. And with this trick, you can save all the users that do not want to watch the video with some time in browser rendering, which we have seen is the bigger part of the overall page load time. So how do we fix this? This is very easy. We simply need to monitor all of the key metrics. But this brings another problem, because monitoring the key metrics is not enough. What we also need to do is, each of these metrics we need to evaluate, and we need to figure out what can we do to make it better. So if you, for example, measure the performance of your shop, and any metric you get the value, let's say 1.0, then the first problem is, how do I know if 1.0 is a good or a bad value? And the second problem is, what do I need to do to improve this value? So what we see in the real world is we have lots of metrics that we need to monitor on the one side, and then on the other side we have lots of rules which we need to evaluate each of the metrics to be able to get some real to-dos. What do I need to do with the online shop? And this can be a bit overwhelming. And in e-commerce, we can add even another dimension to this problem, because in e-commerce, we have different page types with different features, with different layouts, and with different performance use cases. So what we really need to do here is we need to check all of the metrics that are relevant, for example, for Google Core Web Vitals, and we need to check them against each of the page types that we have. And then also we need to check them against each of the devices, because we have desktop and also we have mobile. So now we already have like 8 pages, and on each of them we need to check a bunch of metrics. So if we do this, for example, with tools like Google Lighthouse, then we are this is quite okay. But the problem here will be that this is what we call synthetic tests. So this means I can test how fast or how slow is this particular page in a lab environment by just loading the page and sitting there with a stopwatch and try to measure all the results. But this will not be the same as the page load time for all of your users. This is what we call real user monitoring. And this is because your users will have different kinds of internet connections, different kinds of Wi-Fi, different family members who maybe use up all the bandwidth or maybe not, and also different devices. So what we really need to find out is how fast is this online shop for the users that are trying to buy products here. So quick summary here is we have a bunch of metrics times 4 page types times 2 devices and times 2 methods, the synthetic tests and the real user monitoring. And this can be quite overwhelming. So the solution for this is a tool that we have built, which is absolutely non-commercial, free to use. We built the tool because we needed this to be able to analyze the shops of our customers. So this is commercescore.io, and let me quickly go through what this is and how this can help you to create a simple to-do list of actual tasks that you can do to improve the performance of your online shop. So how does it look like? Basically, under the hood, what we do is we use the same tools that also Google uses, for example, Google Lighthouse and some other tools, and we run an analysis on your shop on every page type. So this is the result. And let me show 2 things here. And by the way, sorry, I apologize for the German screenshots. CommerceScore is also available in English, but I already had these and I was a bit lazy to create new ones. So what we see here is just a list of, it's just a list of the metrics that we measured with Google Lighthouse. And then we see the result in the middle column, and then the right column is where the magic happens. So what we did here is that for each of the metrics, we tried to come up with a scoring rule. So first of all, with the scoring rule, we can help you identify if the value, the measurement of your shop in this particular metric is a good or a bad number. So if it's good, then it's green, and if it's bad, then it's red. And the other thing that we were able to do with the scoring rules here is that we were able to help you prioritize which of the metrics are very important to fix and which of the metrics are maybe nice to have. And this we have achieved by assigning a particular score to each of the metrics. The scoring rule is transparent, so you can just mouse over the I for information icon, and then you will see the if you're green blind, I'm really sorry. Then we messed up. Just saw that in the comments. Maybe we have to find another way for this. So basically what happens here is that if you analyze your shop, then the result will be that you really get a simple to-do list. You start by fixing everything that is red. And if you then have some energy and some budget left, then you go ahead and fix everything that is yellow. And if you're done with that and everything is green, then your shop will have improved in performance overall, regardless if the improvement was in the application, in time to first byte, or the improvement was in the front end. So the score that you see here in the upper left, 530, is the combined score of the home page for this particular shop. The maximum score is 1000. So you can see here that this shop is not bad, it's quite good, but there's still some potential. And let me just explain 2 things here. So the metric total byte weight measures how much data needed to be sent to the browser. Here, this is 15 megabytes, which is absolutely too much. And this value is so bad that we did not give any score to this, but we also punish this with a -25 score. So why is this important? Especially for mobile devices where the bandwidth is not as good as for desktop devices. Every byte that needs to be transferred to the client takes time. So the less you transfer, the faster the client can render the page. And the second metric I want to emphasize here in this particular example is the number of JavaScripts. Here we can see 22. This is also a big problem because the difference between desktop and mobile devices is not only the size of the screen, but in fact, it's also the capability and the performance of the hardware. So mobile devices are slower than desktop devices in terms of the CPU power. And this means that the more JavaScript I do in the website, maybe on a desktop client, it will still be fast enough, but on a mobile client, because the mobile client is slower, has slower hardware, doing lots of JavaScript can mess up the performance. Another thing that we see here, and I know I promised to only talk about two, but one more example is the number of web fonts. So what we see here is this shop has included 8 fonts, and we punished this with a -25 score. Why is this important? Including web fonts is, in my opinion, a lose-lose situation, because either the rendering of in the browser needs to be stopped and is blocking, because obviously the browser only knows how to display the text when the font is already loaded. You cannot display the text when the font is not loaded. So actually, you can tell the browser to start showing the text before loading the font. But what then happens is that sometime in the middle, it will just switch, right? So the page starts loading with the default font, and then in the middle, it will switch to a different font. And this, from a user perspective, is also a bad experience. So from user perspective, we either have to wait until the font is loaded, or we get irritated by the website or by the page sort of jumping around. And this is also, this jumping around of the website is also one of the key factors that Google Core Web Vitals will punish if you do this. And also, but this is just my very, very personal opinion, I have until now not seen a single online shop who could show me how much more products they sell because the font on the page is the same as on the business card. But on the other hand, I found a lot of online shops who showed me how much more they can sell when the page loads faster. So this is for everyone to decide if you want to do this or not. And this is also why we have built commercescore.io, because this analysis helps you to not only to analyze the measurements of your shop, but also to evaluate what is important and what is not important. And the result here is really a simple to-do list. You start by fixing everything that is red or has a minus. Okay, so everything I told you until now is what we call synthetic testing. So this is running a Google Lighthouse against the homepage. But what we also need is the real user monitoring. So not only how fast or how slow is the homepage for a browser and a lab environment, but also for the real users. And luckily, Google has an API that exposes real user experience. I'm not 100% sure where this data is coming from, but I think some of the data comes from anonymized Google Chrome users, and some of the data also is coming from Google Analytics. So Google Core Web Vitals test here is the real user monitoring from what Google has seen from real users. So basically here we see both. We see the synthetic testing and we also see the real user experience. And by the way, I can later share the URL of this shop. But for now, let me just continue with the slides. So, and yes, it's Ernst Ding's family, it's right. In the chat, someone already posted the URL. So what we see here is the analysis for homepage on a desktop device. And then we do the same for the mobile device and also what we store. And by the way, what we see here is this we see on a lot of online shops when we do performance profilings. Everyone talks about mobile first, but in reality, this is simply not true. Nearly all of the performance profilings that we do will show that mobile performance will be much slower than desktop performance. And this is not because the template is changing. This is because of how much data needs to be transferred and how much JavaScript is being done on the mobile device, because the mobile device is slower than a desktop device. Additionally to what you see here, we are also storing the original Google Lighthouse report with all of the details that you see there. So you can also, for every measurement of every page type in either mobile or desktop, check out the Google Lighthouse report and go through all the information that you see there. Also, what you can do is you can create an account, which is for free, and then you can have your shop tested on a regular basis. Let's say, for example, every day. And then you can have a history of your performance per day. So this is very useful if you want to do changes, and then you can check if the changes are improving the performance or not. So until now, we have covered the part which of the metrics are important and what do they really mean, and how do I come from a metric value to what do I really need to do with the online shop. What's missing until now is what would be the goal of a single metric to achieve to be one of the top online stores. So we also have this on the site. So for each of the devices and each of the metrics that we check, and let's, for example, take the number of JavaScripts here. The top 20% of the shops will have 8 or less than 8 JavaScripts. And with top 20%, what I mean is the 20% with the highest overall score, not the top 20% regarding the metric of JavaScript, but the top 20% with the highest score. So the lowest 20% will have 39 or even more JavaScripts added to their page. So this is very useful if you honestly are not sure if your shop needs improvement or not. So it's not always very intuitively visible if this is fast or slow, or if it is fast enough. So with this, you can just compare yourself to the top or to the lowest 20%, and then you can decide for yourself for each of these metrics what your goal for your particular shop could be. So what's the conclusion until now? The conclusion is that which software in the back end you use as an application for your online shop will not make such a big difference as what you then do with your online shop, what you add on a daily basis. And only this will make the difference between being almost perfect and having a lot of potential for improvement. And the problem with this is that it does not happen overnight, but it slightly is happening very, very sneaky. So you add this little feature today and another really small feature tomorrow. And then after 6 months, you see that the performance impact may be really bad. So what I want to advertise is that you need to keep the features of your online shop and the performance in some sort of balance. And you need to know that everything you add to your shop is going to be paid from your performance budget. And this is not what we want. We don't want to overspend the performance budget, because what we in the end want is our online shop to be irresistible for the customers, so that the customer buys the product on our online shop. So if there's only one single thought that I could wish for you guys to take out, to take away from this talk here, then it would be to ask yourself if you really need all of this to sell the products, or if there is anything you can remove from the shop, because this will be the most cost effective and also the easiest way to get rid of stuff and to improve the performance. So this is all I have to show for the tool Commerce Core IO. I was not quite sure in terms of how much time we have, so I have prepared some bonus slides about the topic on how do you know until which point you should improve the performance and how much more money you can make with this. So Sander, I'm not sure if should I spend like another 6 minutes or so, or should we go to questions?
We are running a bit over time, so I'll make you a deal. You'll get a breakout room after the last talk. And I think a lot of people will actually want to join you there, also for the link to the score page.
Okay, so
sorry,
this is
that's a joke, Malte.
So this is exactly why I also included the thank you slide here just before the bonus slides start. Okay, so that's it. Thank you. Please add me on Facebook if you have any further questions. Either we can talk about them now or later in the breakout session with some bonus slides about how you can see how much more money you can make if the site would load faster. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Any quick questions for Thomas before we move on?
I would have 2 questions.
Sure.
The first question is, what do you think? Before you spoke always about to remove stuff of the online shop to make it faster.
Yeah.
But my question is, what do you think about Google's approach of accelerated mobile pages? And why do you think such systems like Shopware don't use it for their online shops?
Okay, so you're touching the PWA area here, right?
No, the AMP, accelerated mobile pages. It's not PWA. It's a different
okay.
approach.
Sorry. So first of all, let me answer the second part of your question. Why is Shopware or any other vendor doing it like the way like they do? And basically, this is something that also Benjamin and Paul have talked about in their talk. As a vendor, you need to be as compatible as possible to every use case that is out there. So what you try to do is you try to use the smallest possible solution that fits for everyone, and then you need to be flexible with how people can use it. So and this will never be the best solution, right? This will always be a solution that is okay for everyone, but it will never be the best solution if you want to stay compatible with every use case that is out there. And how do Windows fix this? So Shopware 6, for example, tries to fix this with the approach that you can use it headless. So if you don't want the standard front end, if this is not good enough for you, or let me explain the other way around. If this is good enough for you, here you go, just use it. But if you want more, then you can use the API. I think it's the storefront API in Shopware 6, and you can build your completely own front end and use Shopware only as an API for the product data. Does this a bit answer your question?
Yes, the second part and the first part, what do you think about this approach of the accelerated mobile pages?
Honestly, I'm not sure. And let me explain to you why. I think there's a huge difference between trying to optimize for performance and trying to have an online shop that is easy to use and looks beautiful and sells products. And honestly, I am not sure what the best approach is to achieve the goal of the online shop. And the goal is not to have an AMP. The goal is not to use Shopware. The goal is to make money and to sell the t-shirts, right? So I'm not sure if maybe Erwin can touch on this topic a bit more, but I think it's more in his expertise. So looking forward to passing this question on.